Hello, my name is abgemacht of Web Diplomacy, and today we are going to do a recap of the School of War from Winter 2015. For those of you who aren't familiar, the School of War is a series that we run on Web Diplomacy in which more experienced players help new players learn the strategies and tactics of diplomacy. And we do this by assigning 7 new players to play the game, and they are each given a TA who will, in private, one-on-one, mentor them throughout the game. In the forum, we also have a thread where people that couldn't participate are able to follow along and ask questions, and we have 1 or 2 professors that give lectures or commentary every year and answer any questions. And in this way, we can have the 7 lucky players who were able to get into the game get really in-depth knowledge from some of the best players on the site, but we're also able to allow anybody who wants to participate to follow along with the game. So in the video description is a link to the thread and the game, so if this sort of thing is of interest to you, you can go through and look and see all of the very detailed commentary and all of the questions that were asked. And if you are interested in participating in a School of War in the future, you can look around in the forum, or you can even post asking when the next one will happen. And usually what happens is once there's enough interest, we just find some experienced players and we get one going. The purpose of this video is to do a brief recap of the School of War from the winter of 2015, and also to give a little practice in quickly reading the state of a board. So on Web Diplomacy, most games are typically 24, 36, 48 hours, and you have a lot of time to look at the board, talk to people, think about things. But if you're playing a live game, either on WebDip or in face-to-face, you don't really have the luxury of pondering over the board. You have to look at the board, figure out what the pieces mean, and then do your diplomacy based on that. And that's kind of what we're going to do here. We're going to look at each season, kind of pick out the most important areas of the board, and then we're going to move on. So let us begin. So this is the spring of 1901, and let's start in the southeast of the board, and we see that Turkey and Russia bounce in Black Sea. This is a very common move. It could mean that Russia and Turkey don't really trust each other, so they didn't want to DM the Black Sea. It could also mean that they do want to work together, but they don't want the rest of the board to panic because a juggernaut is formed. And so a lot of times you'll see perhaps Russia move to Romania and Turkey move Ankara to Constantinople, and that is often a very sure sign that a juggernaut's forming, and that can cause the rest of the board to go nuts. And so bouncing in the Black Sea is a nice way of just slowing things down while still wanting to work with each other. So let's see. There's a bounce in Galatia. That's also another very common move. Russia doesn't want Austria in Galatia, and Austria certainly doesn't want Russia in Galatia. So a bounce there is very common. We see Venice going to Trieste. We could have Aquila Ponto with Austria freely leaving Trieste and also heading down into Budapest, heading Budapest down into Serbia. Austria had some trust of Italy. And if you do Aquila Ponto, that's an extremely strong move because, these days nobody's fooled by Aquila Ponto. But the beautiful thing about a key is even if Turkey knows it's coming, there's very little he can often do about it. Now, with Italy also moving into Venice, though, as Austria, I would be quite concerned because usually you want Italy heading, with his other army going south, so it can convoy into Tunis. Maybe they have some other plan, or maybe remember these are new players, so maybe they didn't quite know how the key works, but we'll have to see about that. Um, Moving right along, we see Germany moving into Denmark. Very, very common move, very strong move. Um, it allows Germany to bounce Russia out of Sweden if Russia doesn't move in a way that Germany likes. So it puts Germany in a very strong negotiating position uh, without him actually moving anything out of position, because he wants to be in Denmark anyway. Now, there are some people that prefer to move Denmark or move Kiel to, say, Holland right away, um, and then moving Kiel into Denmark. Uh, it more or less guarantees both Holland and Denmark. Um, and if Russia expects you to move to Denmark, because Germany almost always moves to Denmark, then you kind of get the benefit of the Denmark threat without actually having to move there. But pretty solid opening. We see that there is no bounce in Burgundy. That's another place that often there are bounces when Germany and France aren't quite comfortable with one another. But as you can see, it worked out pretty good for both of them here. And then finally, we have England, who opened north, which could lead to a very anti-Russian opening because it gives him the option of convoying an army into Scandinavia. And unfortunately, this time it left the English Channel open. Um, so, France kind of has the stronger play right here because even if he had moved to Mao, and if England had moved into the Channel, then it's not such a big deal because France can bounce with Picardy, can bounce moving Mao back to Brest, or he can even just let England take Brest and move into Iberia. It's a little more frustrating for England to have to go back and defend London because he really needs those fleets to expand. So let's move on to the spring or the autumn of 1901. And we also get the builds, which is a little unfortunate because it would be nice to, talk about potential builds separately, but just use your imaginations, I suppose. So we see that we'll start back in the bottom again. We see that um, Turkey ended up moving into the Black Sea, which is a little interesting. Um, Russia, however, took Romania with Ukraine. So this is usually used as a sign of peace towards Turkey, because if Russia takes Romania with Sevastopol, that leaves Sevastopol open for another build. So it also, if you have a fleet in Romania, there's really no way for Russia to attack Austria. But with an army in Romania, then Turkey and Russia could presumably coordinate with each other um, against Austria. Um, so we do see that actually the key, well, I don't know if this is a pure key, but some variant of Austria and Italy working together against Turkey did go through, which I'm happy to see because I love it when Austria and Italy work together to just take out Turkey. And so basically, what we see happened was that Austria supported himself from Serbia into Greece to take Greece, allowing Italy to move into Serbia. And then what we see is that Vienna moved into Trieste, presumably to defend against Italy trying to take Trieste as well. Um, that all worked pretty well. I'm personally a little more a fan of using Albania to take Greece, uh, therefore leaving Austria and Serbia. So it does mean that Italy takes Trieste, but it puts a fleet in Greece, which I find to be much more useful. Another interesting thing is that Italy used Ionian to take Aegean, which is surprising. Usually Italy doesn't forego that Tunis build, but I actually think it's a pretty solid move. That build in Tunis isn't going anywhere. The only other person who could even possibly take it is France, and France usually doesn't blitz down to try to take Tunis. And it puts Italy in an extremely strong position against Turkey. And one of the issues that Italy runs into when doing a Lepanto is not getting his fair share, or what he considers to be his fair share, of Turkey. And by getting his fleet in the Aegean this early, he's really in a position to dictate kind of terms of how they progress forward against Turkey. Um, let's see. So move to Apulia from Venice is fine, I guess. It gets, you know, it, last turn I said, it would be nice if that army wasn't in Venice. This turn, it kind of would almost be better that he had stayed in Venice because now Austria kind of worries, oh, like what's Italy going to build there? But, it's fine. We can see he ended up not building anything, but we're ignoring the builds for a moment. Um, Germany did not bounce Russia and Sweden. Usually a pretty safe move, unless Russia is doing something very anti-German, um, which some of us call a Vallis opening. There's really no reason to antagonize Russia, in my opinion, as Germany. It just opens up another front that doesn't really get you anywhere. So he did do something a little interesting, though, which was work with France to take North Sea, and that's actually, if you want to go after England, being in North Sea is a very very good place for you to be. And so this is what we see is some very very good coordination between France and Germany. Um, we see that uh, England ended up moving his fleet into Norway, which was a very smart move because Norway, it does typically belong to England, but Russia would really like to see him put a fleet there, and so he did that, and then he ended up defending London uh, with Yorkshire, which a smart move. So we're looking at the builds now. We see Turkey building a fleet in Smyrna, which is pretty much his only choice. Austria building pretty much the only place he could. Italy, again, if Italy had built an army, I think Austria would have been in a lot of trouble. But that fleet's a very smart move. Very good builds from Germany. You want that fleet so you can get your piece of England, but England can't, or Germany can't be a pure naval power. So that army is a good build. And France, France being allied with Germany and having absolutely nothing in the south to worry about, that northern fleet build is very good. Um, Russia, a little surprised by Russia's builds. He obviously wants to take out a piece of England, which is perfectly fine. But you know, perhaps a little more. He probably, looking at it, he probably has enough units in the south. Russia, you want to make sure you don't open up too many fronts, but for the moment, he's probably fine. And then England, we see a fleet Edinburgh, and that army, the army's okay. I think I would have preferred a fleet, though, so that you could protect, the Irish Sea, as England, you have to be a naval power, and if you need the navies to match the navies that the enemies are sending at you. So, um, I think building a second navy as England might be the only thing that I would suggest was not the greatest build in this turn. So moving on now to the spring of 1902. Starting in the southeast again, we see Turkey is just playing it defensive, which is, pretty good. Turkey can hold out for pretty much indefinitely. If Russia's not helping Italy and Austria attack Turkey, then Turkey can survive most of the game. It won't do anything, but won't be eliminated. Um, and we see um, we see Austria defending Vienna, which is a decent play, I suppose. Um, Italy moving pretty much as expected. France doing very well, getting Belgium and Spain, getting himself two builds for this year, and positioning his fleet presumably to start heading north and wrap around the northwest of England. Now, Germany, I do not know what Germany is doing. So he had himself in an excellent position against England, and instead of taking advantage of that, he is now sending units towards Russia. Um, Now we can see this could be remember, these are full press games, so there could have been a diplomatic breakdown here. So we see Russia moves to Bohemia, which could mean, and Russia may have told Germany that, and Germany could have been annoyed about that, and kind of did this as a counterattack. Now, if Germany really didn't want Russia in Bohemia, he should have just bounced Russia in Bohemia. Um, or he shouldn't have worried about it because it's clear that Russia wants to go after Austria. So Germany has now kind of opened up two fronts, an English front and a Russian front. And although France is currently his ally, he's allowing France to get, pretty much all the centers at the moment. And so, he as a central power, Germany's going to have to watch out for this. So now we are in the autumn of 1902. So we see Turkey still holding the line, and but it is getting rough. Italy and Austria are doing a decent assault on Turkey, um, but we see that Austria is having a very rough time. So he did not defend himself properly against Russia. And if you go and look at the commentary that I post, I think I explained kind of in detail a better defense that Austria could have done against Russia in this moment. Um, and Italy now foregoes Tunis again. Now, this time I think it's getting to the point where, okay, Italy kind of needs to take Tunis, because now it's leaving itself. It's becoming very tempting for France, and the builds are kind of needed. And so the first year I would have said, good, fine, not taking Tunis. This time I would have recommended taking Tunis. Um, Russia doing a good job of not getting himself overextended. Um, just taking Austria, staying allies with Turkey, and we actually see in the north it looks like he's working with England, which is interesting. Now that's quite a save for England, because if Germany had just continued going after England, then Russia would have presumably just taken Norway, and England would have been in would have been in even more trouble than he currently is. Um, but we see it looks like Russia and England found a common enemy in Germany, and they did some excellent diplomacy there to kind of push back against Germany. Um, so Germany now um, is kind of in a bit of a pickle. He's now got two enemies. Um, he's now using Silesia to defend Munich. And the oddest thing is that Holland hits Belgium, which makes no sense at all, because he's already got two enemies. Why if perhaps he thought he was getting it from France and France lied, but I don't know why he would think that. But it's when you see something like that, when Germany's already at war with England and Russia, when he attacks a French center, you're in something's really wrong there. Um, France doing absolutely great. His positioning's amazing. He's getting centers, and he has no enemies. I mean, Italy is way overcommitted in the east. Germany hit Belgium, but it's not like he's in a position to take it. And all of England's forces are all up in the very north towards Scandinavia. And so France is looking great. For the builds, we see that Austria disbanded Greece. Maybe disbanding Ionian would have been a little better, so that you would have kept those units on Bulgaria. Um, uh, I think that would have been better, unless he plans on just moving Ionia into Greece. Because again, it's usually better to have a fleet in Ionia than a fleet in Greece than an army. Russia, now that he's going after Germany instead of England, building another army in Warsaw seems to make a lot of sense. And France, two more fleets. That he needs that fleet in Brest if he wants to really take all of England, and that fleet in Marseille. Maybe he sees Tunis and he wants it, or maybe he just wants more fleets in the north, and that's his only other port. And then Germany, making a mess for himself, building an army is fine. He has to now, but he kind of could have been better off if he didn't start picking fights with Russia. So now we're in the spring of 1903, and we see what do we see? So Turkey takes a bit of a risk, and I think it's nice. As Turkey, you can just, when you're being assaulted, you can just sit in the corner and do nothing, just defend, or you can take a chance, and he took a chance, and it paid off great. He's mobilized his fleet that was in Black Sea, not doing much of anything. He ended up taking a center. And now he's got Italy and Austria on the defensive, really. We see Italy actually fall back to take Greece, which is interesting because Austria needs those centers. Austria and Italy were together, and when Italy starts taking an Austrian center, it's not looking good for Austria. Um, Austria does put up a decent defense of his remaining home centers. And then we have Austria. Oh, I remember this move. I believe he was trying to convoy Apulia into Smyrna and presumably was expecting support from Eastern Med. So, I mean, you can see the communication between Italy and Austria has just completely broken down. It's not good. For such a beautiful opening. It's gone downhill very quickly. Um, in France, we see, we see a very nice positioning against England, and we see that it looks like he is in fact going to mobilize his fleet against England rather than try to use it against Italy. Which is perfectly fine. Italy's not going anywhere. It's not like he's getting senders anytime soon. So if France can take most of England and then go after Italy, that's perfectly fine. Um, Now, there's this move with Germany, which was very controversial during our commentary. Personally, I loved it because Germany had got himself in such a pickle, and there was no motivation at all for Russia to stop attacking him at that point. From Russia's frame point, it was like, all I wanted to do was go after England, and you made a mess of it. So screw you, Germany. I'm just gonna take you out. And there's nothing Germany could do about it, but except for this move, which I love it. My favorite move of this game. And so basically, what Germany says is like, okay, we can have a war of attrition, but we're both going to be the worse off for it. Because now I'm gonna basically split your country in half, and this is what happens when Russia gets overextended. And so by convoying that army into Livonia and being able to actually, take guaranteed Moscow, but could also take St. Pete unless England helps Russia out. Germany has now significantly strengthened his diplomatic negotiating power to try and work something out with Russia. England hanging on pretty much the best he can. That's kind of the story of this game. Was England did a pretty decent defense, but when you have that many people coming after you, it's once France gets rolling and starts getting those fleets. Once France has fleets from the Channel to North Atlantic, it's hard for England to put up a defense, no matter how skilled he is. Um, so now moving on to the autumn of 1903. Um, so we see that, a lot of interesting things happen, but let's start where we always do. So Turkey actually ended up keeping Serbia, and this is great. Turkey played a very strong game. He could have been just stuck in that corner, but he really got out there and took a risk, and it paid off great. Italy ended up keeping Greece, which is certainly not good for an Austrian-Italian alliance, and because of that, presumably, Austria took Tunis, and you can't blame them. You know, Italy should have never been in a position to allow Austria to take Tunis. And once he did get in that position, he should have realized that he had to work with Austria. And so this was just such a diplomatic failing on both Italy and Austria's part. Um, and then finally that Italian army moves up to Venice. It hadn't been doing anything. Um, it's yeah. Yeah, my frustrations of some of these are coming back to me. But this is a learning game. So we expect people to make some plays with this, and that's actually a very common thing for Italian players. Is you get your first two centers, and then you don't know what to do with your units. They just kind of wander back and forth, and that's actually a very, very typical. Just like Russia overexpanding, Italy aimlessly wandering is a very typical thing for new players to have happen. So we see Germany and Russia are all up in each other's business. Germany did take Moscow, definitely. Um, he had to. And Russia took Munich, which is, a very nice center for Russia to have. Um, and yeah, it's not good for the positioning is not good for either of these players because Russia's now cut in half. Germany's lost, arguably his most important home center. He's also lost Denmark. Um, not great. And he's still hitting Belgium, which is baffles me because France showed no animosity towards Germany whatsoever. He built all fleets. He was clearly sending them after England, and so why Germany is wasting an army that he desperately needs to defend against Russia, hitting Belgium is, you have to, you can't defend against everyone. If you go into if you play the game assuming all six countries are your immediate enemy, you might as well not play because you're gonna die. You can't defend against everyone on the board. You have to pick somebody you're gonna trust for a certain amount of time and go with it. Especially since France didn't give any made no actions to appear hostile towards Germany. Um, what Now, what France did this turn, who knows? I'm sure we talk more about it in the forum, but this is you know yeah, sometimes it happens. You get busy you get busy on web dip or in face to face. You lose track of time and you don't get orders in. You gotta make the best of it. And it's great for England, who's been holding on like a champ. That worked out great for him. In terms of disbands, we see Germany disband Moscow, which, is good. He can't defend Moscow. And it also serves as kind of an olive branch towards Russia, saying, I'm not going to try to give you a hard time if you just take back your center, like, maybe we can work something out. Um, Turkey builds another fleet, which is good. Um, and that brings us into the fall of the spring of 1904. All right, we are back with the spring of 1904. Got a glass of water, also sitting a little further from the camera. Didn't mean to get up in everybody's face like that. So what do we see? We see that Turkey is continuing on his excellent path of expansion, taking Greece. Great job there, great comeback. Um, Italy falling back. Very little choice at this point. But not making a great use of the units that he has. So we see Venice doesn't do anything. It could have at least hit Trieste to stop any potential support that even if it was to defend Vienna. He could have even supported Vienna into Trieste, so they would have one solid block of defense against the Juggernaut. Instead he I should say, let me let me now I'm just rambling, but I'm just trying to take a look at the orders here to make sure that no, Venice did hold, so sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure Italy didn't potentially order some sort of support for Austria that didn't go through. So, what Italy does instead, though, is move to Tyrrhenian Sea to force himself into Tunis. He would have been better served, I think, moving into Adriatic and trying to take Trieste and, saying, hey, Austria, like, just live in Tunis. Like, support hold Ionian. We'll hold out against Turkey together, and you get to live in Tunis. Unfortunately, there was a serious diplomatic breakdown between Italy and Austria. Austria, meanwhile, I guess is heading towards Iberia. I don't really know at this point. We see Russia doing great. taking back Moscow, which was expected, but also vacating Munich, which is a little surprising because he probably could have held on to it. Um, but I guess he felt it was more important to come to come to terms with Germany, which I think is completely because of that amazing convoy Germany did last year that allowed him into Moscow. France, making up for his last lackluster turn, ending up getting into London uh, and getting himself in position to further his attack on England. England continuing to put up a decent defense. He can't defend against everything, but I think he's done a pretty decent job. Now Germany continues to do some weird things. He's you know uh, moving to supporting himself into Ruhr instead of supporting himself into Munich. I can understand moving out of Baltic, so he's if he's really reached peace with Russia. But why he keeps trying to antagonize France is beyond me. When what he should be doing is prioritizing recapturing Munich and and then trying to get something from England. Because at this point, he's for a Germany that made it into North Sea in 1901, he's pretty set to not get a single English center. Moving on to the fall of 1904, um, we see Turkey, doesn't overextend himself, doesn't push harder than he needs to. He just gets gets another center and holds what he has. And helps with Russia too. We see that support hold in Trieste is a sign of goodwill on Turkey's part. Finally, we see Italy. Uh, well, we see Italy finally starting to use Venice for something as he tries to support himself into Trieste. And he takes Tunis, which is fine, but it would have been a whole. But we see he gives up Ionian for it, and it would have been a whole lot better if Austria had stayed in Tunis and held Italy in Ionian. But you can't. You can only make your decisions based on where the pieces are, and they weren't there anymore. So taking Tunis was the best thing he could do. Austria, you know, going for uh, going for Spain, which was never going to be left open. Um, but he had it rough with Russia piling him on like that, and then the breakdown with Italy. I think Austria is a rough country. And especially for a new player. And kudos to Austria for playing it through the whole game because I've been involved with the School of War many times and over the years, and unfortunately, new players do have a tendency to go into CD when they start losing their home centers. But so good on Austria for playing through to the bitter end because that's really in the spirit of the game. Um, Russia doing great. Helping Germany back into Munich. I guess Russia and Germany have come to terms, and Germany really wants to go after France. And I guess he feels safe enough with Russia to do that. Um, where that breakdown between France and Germany happened, I don't know. It's unfortunate, really, for Germany, I think, in the long run, but we'll have to see. France, having a rough time with England. Unfortunately, he was compelled to defend Spain. He absolutely had to do that. Um, and but what we see is that England is, people consider Turkey to be the very defensible country. It's impossible to take out Turkey. But England is very capable of defending himself as well as he's shown throughout this game. Um, Yep. So let's so the build. So we see a fleet in the northern coast of St. Petersburg. So it looks like Russia is finally ready to go after England, which is completely understandable, but just unfortunate for England, who held out so long and so well against France. Um, Turkey building an army, which is interesting. I would have liked to see another fleet so that he could have just continued sailing, really with very little hindrance, right through Italy. Turkey could take Albania, but Russia already owns Trieste, and so maybe he's planning some sort of convoy into Italy. But you do somewhat wonder where Italy is planning on going with all those armies. So, into the spring of 1905. All right, so we see Russia. Uh, looks like he's finally ending his relationship with Turkey. It does have to happen at some point. Well, it doesn't have to. I mean, there are some games where Turkey and Russia just completely sweep the board, and they usually end up, with a three-way draw with France. But Russia's strong. He made peace with Germany. He doesn't have an England to worry about. He's already taken all of Austria, so taking on Turkey isn't the worst idea. And he's put himself in a decent position to do that. He controls the Black Sea. Turkey is in no position to take the Black Sea back. And at a cursory glance, it looks like he can defend his portion of the Balkans fairly well. Um, Italy, uh, trying to make sure that Turkey doesn't sneak into Tyrrhenian Sea. Um, I think the chances of Turkey trying to do that were very small. I think if anything, Turkey would have moved into Adriatic. Um, but you know, uh, you wouldn't have wanted to. Italy wouldn't have wanted to support himself into Ionian because then who knows where Turkey could have retreated to. So unfortunately, the only thing he could have done more useful was to just hit Ionian to break any potential support. But whether or not he could have guessed that's what Ionian would have done, I don't. I won't say. Um, you know, France, for having such an amazing early game, is now having a rough time, and this goes to show that you got to stay on your feet. You just because the early game is good for you, you can't just assume you're going to roll through the board. You have to keep your alliances up, keep your communication up, and you can't get sloppy with your tactics. And what ended up happening was France just stopped getting builds, and he couldn't penetrate through England's defenses. Couldn't convince Russia to take Norway. Couldn't get Russia and couldn't get Germany to go after England. And and now he's heading south with one of his units, so he's even less likely to be able to get centers from England. You know, he's still strong though, still powerful, so it's not like he's going to get eliminated, but he's got to kind of reassess his situation for sure. England continuing with an amazing defense and amazing diplomacy as well, because we see Russia is still not attacking England. He could just pop right in there, take that center. Now that's not all altruism though, because if Russia does take Norway, chances are that France will gobble up most of the English isles. And so, that's very smart on Russia's part. You can't just take centers with complete disregard for um, how that will impact the rest of the board. And so that's some good insight on Russia's part there. Um, then we have Germany, who's made peace with Russia. That's great.
And now is going after France, which I think is fine. I wouldn't have advised Germany going after Russia if Russia's not interested in going after him. I would have liked to see him go after England, to be honest. But that could have been the price of Russia's peace. Russia might have said, I'll lay off you, but you got to go after France, and so that's what could be happening there. So moving into the fall of 1905, we have uh, Russia. He gets Ankara. Great for him. That was very smart, and he ends up holding on to his portion of the Balkans, and not only holds on to them, but continues to move his units south. So he further borders Turkey. Just a shame for Turkey, really, to have put up such a good defense against Austria and Italy, and to have escaped out of his corner only to be stabbed right in the back by Russia is unfortunate. But that's why you gotta maintain you gotta keep up your diplomacy, and you gotta keep up those good relations so something like that doesn't happen. Um, so then so now we see Turkey and Italy starting to work together, which is great. They were at war, but to reassess the map and see what changed, and to be able to work together with your former enemies is key to diplomacy. Unfortunately, though, Italy's just not using his units to the full potential still. So, I mean, you see, well, no, that's not a fair thing for me to say. I was going to criticize Tunis not moving into Ionian, but again, that French fleet was in Western Mediterranean, so that wasn't a valid criticism. But um, we but yeah, so Italy's doing fine there. Um, Let's see. France backing off Italy was a very smart thing. I'm glad he did that. He should have never gone to Western men in the first place. Um, I don't I don't know why he moved to Spain. I think we had a long conversation about this in the forum. But I would have gone straight back to Mid-Atlantic Ocean because the because Gascony can defend Marseille. If if he wanted to, yeah, I just don't think Spain is the best place for him. Um, and then France is just, you'll see me. I went nuts in the forum about this fleet in Norwegian Sea, which sits there forever. And I don't know what's he doing. He's not. Heck, I mean, he could even support Russian to Norway, and he, yeah, yeah. So he could even support one of Russia's units into Norway, and cause Russia to take Norway by accident. He could move into North Sea and start threatening Germany's north. He could do any number of things, but he doesn't move it, and then he doesn't disband it. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. Um, England still doing great. He's preventing Russia from taking Norway. He's defending against France. He's doing a great job. And then Germany is also doing good. He finally got Belgium after hitting it with Holland for 5 years. Even when he was losing all of his eastern centers, he's in Burgundy. It was looking rough, but another example of why you can't give up, because Germany was down to, I believe it was three centers, and maybe four, three centers, and but he came back, and he's doing good now. All right. So the spring of 1906, we have Russia continuing to make headway into Turkey. Turkey can hold on for a long time, but if Russia gets deep behind him like that, it is rough for Turkey. That's a hard thing for Turkey to defend against. He's doing a good job of holding the Balkans. but he's doing it at the expense of losing his home center. So that's not ideal. Um, Italy now, um, Italy moves into Adriatic, and he moves into Venice, and taking going after France at this point, I think is not the worst decision. He can make a line to defend against Russia, and Russia doesn't necessarily want to go further west. He's pretty busy taking the southern Balkans, and so for Italy to try and get some centers from France, I think is a pretty good move. Um, France now moves to Barents Sea. I mean, I guess he at least moved it. Um, the problem is your units are not nearly as effective if they aren't near each other. And the things that France can do in Barents Sea, um, are nothing. Nothing is what he can do in Barents Sea. The anything he wanted to do there, he could have done in Norwegian, but he would have been a whole lot better disbanding that fleet, or moving it south. The uh, Just unfortunate, for such a very strong opening. England now doing amazing. He's finally off his island. He's recaptured the North Sea, which is great. He's pushed back France, and he might be even in a position to start taking centers from France. Germany the same. He's keeping up the peace with Russia, and he's pushing really hard into France. So autumn of 1906. We see a very interesting thing here. We see France porting England into Norway. So again, remember alliances are very fluid, and the fact that after all of these years, France and England can start working together, I think is great. Now, so what it looks like happened is, obviously England wasn't going to leave Edinburgh with a fleet in Norwegian Sea, and so the plan they must have come up with was France moved to Barents in order to get England into Norway. Now, that's a great plan, except it doesn't help France at all. Okay, Russia is not France's enemy. Germany is France's enemy. And to help England against Russia, maybe the thinking was, well, if I help England, then maybe England won't attack me. But if instead of that fleet in Barents, he had kept his fleet in the Channel, um, then England wouldn't have been in a great position to attack him anyway. And then not only to do that, but then to keep it and disband Brest. Yeah. So what does happen is when countries start to, and this is something I'm actually very very guilty of. So it's not just a beginner problem, but when countries start to get overwhelmed and attacked on all sides, they sometimes panic and try to escape to some other part of the board. And I actually do this. But what it ends up doing is it ends up only making your demise quicker because you have fewer units where they should be to defend. And then you're left with a couple straggling units, and unless you're very, very skilled and end up getting on a stalemate line to defend against a solo threat, nobody's going to keep you around. So you're almost always better off keeping your units by your home centers and just defending, and using diplomacy and praying that something else on the board causes at least one of your attackers to move another direction. Um, Italy, Italy doing pretty good. Gets into Spain, um, and we see this support of Spain to Marseille. Now, what is happening there? This is a it ended up not doing anything, but it had the potential of doing something very clever, which was if Gascony and Spain had both bounced to Marseille, or if Burgundy and Spain had bounced to Marseille, this would have forced Marseille to go into would have forced Spain to go into Marseille when a bounce was otherwise expected, allowing Western men to sneak into Spain, uh, which is what I suggested France do with Norwegian Sea and Norway a few turns ago, having Russia inadvertently moved into Norway. It's the same idea of supporting one unit of a bounce to break the bounce. So good job on Italy there. France, yeah, I think I have given France a hard enough time for this turn. So we'll move on to Germany, who's doing a nice job against France, and it looks like he might be thinking of turning on Germany, or on Russia, excuse me. We can see him going to Heligoland Bite, and moving into Kiel. A bit of a risky move with Russia still on a border of Munich. Um, we'll have to see what he plans on doing with that Kiel unit. All right, and then we have the spring of 1907. So here we see, this is probably what France was hoping for, was to have Barents Sea get into St. Petersburg, presumably as some last ditch, Hail Mary, gonna live in St. Pete. Um, but as we'll see, it's not going to work out that great. And as could probably be expected, while England did help with that, it wasn't to be nice. It was because he was at war with Russia, and we see England taking Brest, and we see we see Germany taking Paris, and we see Italy taking Portugal. And unfortunately, while France did move to St. Pete, it looks like none of his other units did anything. And I will confirm that because I hate accusing somebody of not entering orders when they did. Um, so if you pardon me for just a moment. No, so they did all hold, uh, which is unfortunate because at the very least he probably could have defended Paris. Italy, after having quite a rough middle game, is now doing pretty great. He's got Iberia, and he's pushing back against Russia. Um, Turkey is things are looking rough for Turkey for sure. When Russia gets in behind him like that, it's there's not much you can do. And now Germany does some odd things. It seems he got a little nervous about Russia, and it moves back to Munich. And then I guess he got nervous about Kiel from Denmark, and so he moved back. If you can, you want to try to avoid having units just shuffle back and forth. It's not a great use of them. All right, so France gets St. Pete and tries to help England against Norway, even though tries to help England against Russia in Norway, even though England took Brest, which I think is fine. England wasn't going to let a center like that just stay open, and if England is a lot less likely to take St. Pete from France than Russia is, so England or France might as well help Russia. Russia. Whoa, pardon me. France might as well help England against Russia in the north. And France tries to take back Spain, but his support gets cut by Germany, and so that worked out that worked out well for Italy. Um, I think you can ask yourself, oh, should Gascony have supported Marseille? Because maybe he would at least got into Spain, even if it risked losing Marseille. But I think France did the best he could there. Um, Turkey, unfortunately, it's just, it's the way it goes. But he had such a nice middle game. He held off so nice. It's just a shame to see him go like that. But great job on Russia for taking him out so fast and without really anybody's help. So Russia did a great job there, and Italy looking great too. So the spring of 1908. Um, so at this point, Turkey is pretty much done for. Um, Italy trying to hold back against Russia, but he just can't get Trieste. Um, and it looks like he's probably going to try to get at least Greece to keep that from Russia. Um, and then we have England, who's interestingly moving out of Brest and heading down to Gascony. Um, you know, uh, I think the chances of Germany coming up and taking Brest are small. Um, so that's probably fine. We see Germany now trying to repositioning himself against Russia. Trying to get into Baltic. You know, we see we have a nice little Congo line of bounced units. Um, Perhaps maybe moving Ruhr or Belgium to Holland and Burgundy to Ruhr, so you at least would have gotten some movement out of all that. Um, because the chances of Russia not hitting Baltic were extremely small. You could have even said, maybe even moving Berlin to Prussia could have been a potential there. Russia doing great. He's now pretty much at war with everyone on the board, but he's strong. He's got a decent unit position, so he's looking pretty okay. So in the fall, we have a very nice turn. Let me just go back here. So he does sacrifice Norway, but he gets St. Pete back. That's pretty good. And unfortunately, Turkey is eliminated. He had a good game. I think he played well. And the only thing was he left himself a little open to Russia, and it came back and bit him. But other than that, a solid game. France too, unfortunately, is gone. He had an amazingly strong opening, and I think that one turn where he didn't move any of his fleets against England, it got him in a rut, and but he didn't give up either. Some of his moves towards the end weren't incredibly efficient, but he did stick it out to the bitter end, and for that, everyone in the game and everyone else running the School of War is very appreciative. So to all three of those, Austria, Turkey, and France, who were eliminated. Great job to all three of them for how they played the game. Um, we see Germany and England working together. Germany actually letting England into Marseille, which is nice because England could use those builds to start pumping fleets up north. So that was well thought out by them. Um, Germany getting into the bite, which is good. I don't know if I would have sacrificed Baltic Sea. I mean, he would have ended up taking Russia would have ended up taking it anyway, because Germany didn't break the support from Denmark. But I think I would have at least tried to hit Baltic. Um, and Italy, Italy did get Greece, so good for him there. I don't. I don't. It would have been nice if he had coordinated with Germany and England about Marseille, but I think I talk about that in great detail in the forum. I may even contradict myself from what I'm saying here, but if that's something of interest to you, definitely take a look at it there. Um, and then, actually, in the spring of 1909, we draw the game. Um, I think there definitely could have been a little more movement on the board. Russia was going very strong. Let's see real quick here. 15 centers. Um, it would have been nice to see how close he could have got. Um, Greece, I think he could have got. Maybe he could have taken back Norway. The thing is, England was now pumping out fleets. Germany and England were working together very well. Um, so this probably would have ended up as a four-way draw. It just would have been nice to see the board settle a little bit before it got drawn. But so this was overall, I think, a very excellent game. The All seven players played very well. Um, we saw actually some very interesting moves with the German convoy into Moscow, um, with Turkey breaking out of the Balkans despite being attacked by a Lepanto, Russia stabbing Turkey from behind, and England's amazing defense against France for most of the game. So um, yeah, so hopefully you found this video somewhat um, educational. And if you are interested in a more in-depth analysis, again, check out the thread, which we linked in the description of the video. And if you would like to participate in a School of War, either as a student or as a TA or a professor, just post something in the forum, and we can find out when the next School of War will be happening. All right, thanks for watching.